Chapter 2. You've made the team. What next? Before you begin, good preparation is the key to success in mooting competitions. This book aims to give you an insight into issues you are likely to encounter throughout the process. This means that you can begin preparing for all aspects now, rather than have problems descend on you at a time when your efforts are better spent refining your oral presentations. Timing and commitment. We have already noted that participation in a moot competition involves intensive training. With intensive training comes commitment. A team will set its own level of commitment, but if you want your team to perform at its best, every member needs to be highly committed to ensure the team's success. Participating in an international mooting competition involves an extraordinary amount of time. It takes time to prepare, it takes time to travel overseas and participate. All of this needs planning. In particular, you need to think about what impact it will have on other commitments you may have, such as paid employment, other studies, and family relationships. Paid employment is potentially the most difficult to accommodate. The time of year when the moot actually takes place needs careful consideration when you are deciding whether or not to participate. For example, a moot that takes place in the early part of the year will require most students in the Southern Hemisphere to work solidly throughout their summer break. There are advantages and disadvantages to this. First, you will not need to divert your attention from other subjects that also demand and deserve your attention. However, equally, you will not be able to pursue recreational activities and relaxation during your holiday time. Days spent at the beach are likely to be replaced by days spent in the library. Perhaps more significantly, the full-time work you had hoped to do over summer may not be possible. A moot held during the year may conflict with important academic events such as exams and due dates for assignments. If this occurs, you will need to consult your tutors and lecturers to see if alternative arrangements can be made. What about money? For some fortunate students, money will not be an issue, but for many it is a very big concern. Unfortunately, participating in an international mooting competition does cost money, whether that is simply the entrance fee or includes the costs of flights and accommodation while you are overseas. Think about where the money is going to come from at this early stage. You do not want to find yourself distracted by this issue while you are trying to devote all your attention to preparing and practicing your arguments. Because the situation for every team is different, it is important that all members sit down together and discuss this issue. There are several options you could consider, and you need to work out what will best suit your team. Everyone pays for themselves. The most obvious option is that everyone pays for themselves. However, this can be riddled with difficulties. Not everyone in your team is likely to have the same capacity to fund their trip. Since you are participating as a team, you should travel together and stay in the same accommodation to really make it a team experience. But some people simply will not be able to afford to stay in some hotels or to travel on particular airlines. This can lead to difficult decisions that need to be made as a team. It also means that financial status becomes a discriminating factor. There will be those who simply cannot compete if they are required to fund their own participation. This is a great shame, as every student could benefit greatly from this experience. Sponsorship. The alternative, or in addition to everyone personally contributing, is for your team to obtain sponsorship. Sponsorship can come from a range of sources. Your law school is the most obvious potential source. Depending on how your particular educational institution is structured, you may be able to get sponsorship from different parts of the university as well. Other potential sources of funding are law firms and private benefactors. The advantage of sponsorship is that it creates a pool of money that every member of the team can benefit from equally. As a team, you may choose to nominate someone or a couple of people who, in return for some lighter research duties, spend some time on raising sponsorship. There are definite advantages in directing your sponsorship efforts in this way. Primarily, it ensures that you have a coordinated approach. Potential sponsors will get frustrated if 5 different people from the same team individually approach them to ask for sponsorship. It is also more efficient for team members to focus on particular areas rather than every member attempting to spend some time on all the team tasks. Some team members can concentrate on detailed research while others can focus on raising money. If your team decides to nominate 1 or 2 people to seek sponsorship, it is very important that you choose the right people within your group to take on the task. Within any team, there will be a mix of personalities. It is important that you recognize that each of you has different strengths. In order to learn to operate well as a team, you need to work out how to fully utilize everyone's individual strengths. Fundraising generally requires a very outgoing personality. You will only be successful if you willingly take on the task, bearing in mind that it is a big job. Some of the challenges involved may only become apparent once you begin. For example, you may need to coordinate your fundraising efforts with those of other groups within your law school that are also seeking sponsorship, such as other moot teams and the Law Students Society. The task of fundraising carries with it significant responsibility, and therefore can place real pressure on the relationships in the team. As a team, you should ensure that you set realistic fundraising targets. It is much better to underestimate what you think you can raise. If for whatever reason your team ultimately fails to reach the intended target, make sure you pause and think of the best interests of the team before you rush to blame your designated fundraiser. The moot problem. Read the problem. There is a great deal of excitement when you first receive the moot problem. Everyone is different and approaches the first reading their own way. Some people read every word of every line very carefully. Others just glance over it and think the answers are obvious. As you would expect, these people are in for a surprise and will very quickly learn that first impressions rarely reflect final ones. The best approach is probably somewhere in the middle. Sit down and read the problem carefully. There is no need to be too meticulous the first time you look at it. Instead, you want to absorb the basic information and facts, so you can begin to plan how you might tackle the problem. Read it over once, maybe twice if you want to, and then put it aside and just think about it for a day or so. Sleep on it. Many students, when reading their moot problem for the first time, think, "I have absolutely no idea what this is about." By their very nature, international moot competitions deal with complex international legal questions, and therefore the subject matter tends to be outside the ordinary curriculum. Do not be alarmed by the subject matter. All it means is that you are about to face a very steep learning curve. Over the next few weeks, you are going to absorb lots and lots of new information. Far from being a bad thing, this is a wonderful challenge that should excite you. Read the rules of the competition. A crucial task is to familiarize yourself with the rules of the competition. Each competition will have its own set of rules, and you need to know exactly how the rules affect how you should prepare before you begin to solve the moot problem. Imagine you had done months and months of research and handed in your written submissions, and were then told that you would have won an award, but unfortunately you had used the wrong citation method. Or you attended the oral hearings and got perfect scores for all of them. But because you only argued the applicant's case in each moot, you were not eligible for the Best Oralist Award. The rules of the competition will influence the way you prepare, so it is very important that you are familiar with them right from the beginning. For example, there may be rules about how you can use the evidence provided in the moot problem. It would be a waste of valuable time to practice using the evidence in a different way. Be aware that the rules of a particular competition may conflict with some of the recommendations in this book. This book is written as generally as possible and aims to develop themes that are consistent with most, if not all, advocacy, whether in international or domestic moots or in professional practice. However, there may be occasions where particular rules prohibit the use of some of the techniques discussed. In particular, you should be aware of the extent to which the rules of the competition allow you to utilize external assistance. If the rules do conflict with a technique outlined here, think about the purpose of the technique suggested and find a way to achieve the same outcome within the rules. Asking for help. You need to find a quick way of gaining a rudimentary understanding of the subject matter. Once you have the basics, then you can develop your ideas and start to come to grips with the complexities of the issues. it would be a good idea to do a crash course in the area. Usually, this is something that your coach will coordinate for you, but you can be proactive and take steps as a team to begin the learning process. There are many people you can turn to for help. Your coach will be your first port of call, and within your law school, there will be lecturers with specialties in all sorts of disciplines who will be a great resource for you. 12. The art of argument. If your law school has been participating in a moot competition for some years, you should seek out former participants. Arguably, there are no better people to give you an understanding of what will be required. Consulting former moot participants can be a vital part of achieving success, an approach we return to later in the book. See pages 96-7. Other students at your law school may also be able to help. Part of your subject matter might be taught briefly in an optional unit taken late in your degree. If so, find students who have taken that subject and ask them to speak to the team. Ask the lecturers if there are any postgraduate students who have an interest in the subject matter. Postgraduate students can be a great resource, as they are usually experienced researchers who can offer many tips. You might also consider approaching law firms, particularly those you already have a relationship with, such as the ones who may be sponsoring your team. Generally, people will be willing to offer their assistance if they know that you appreciate and value their effort. On this note, it is very important to thank everyone who gives up their time to help you. Setting deadlines. The task of estimating the time required to complete a project is often one of the hardest. In one of the Star Trek movies, Captain Kirk asks Scotty how he always manages to get things done ahead of the estimated time. Scotty's reply was that he estimated how long it would take and then tripled it before telling the captain when to expect the work to be completed. This is a very sensible idea. Break down the process of preparing for the moot into individual tasks and estimate how long each will take. This is a difficult job and your coach will help you. Start by asking yourself when the first task is due. Do you have a matter of weeks or months? Only rarely do things go to plan, so make sure you have enough time to accommodate any unexpected obstacles. Be careful, though, not to fall into the trap of thinking the deadlines you set are always flexible. Once you set a deadline, always work to it.